So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Camilla Palestra, and I'm the Associate Curator at the Center for Sustainable Fashion at UAL. And I'm very pleased to have you today for our last of a first series of the Art for the Environment conversations. The series of conversations is connected to the Art for the Environment International Artist Residency Programme, which was launched in 2015 by Professor Lucy Orta at UAL as a way to offer students and alumni of UAL the incredible opportunity to apply to fully funded residencies across the globe, thanks to our incredible networks of international partners from Brazil to India, from Senegal to Canada, and across Europe and the UK. And the aim of the program is to offer practitioners a mental space and a physical space to reflect on issues that define the 21st century, from biodiversity to climate justice, social rights, and social economy. So we decided in a time in which the physical residencies are on pause, we decided to bring together some of our partners and former residents to reflect on their experiences and to learn more about their creative agency in envisioning a better and more sustainable world of tomorrow. I'm very pleased to have today with us Lillian Fragi, the founder of LABVERDE Art Immersion Program in the Amazon, Naomi Bailey-Cooper, fashion textile designer, and Yifeat, sound artist, both UAL alumni and former residents at LABVERDE. Lilian is an independent curator and producer based in Manaus in the Amazon in Brazil. She is the co-founder of Manifesta, an organization devoted to developing multidisciplinary contents involving art, architecture, and politics, and the founder of the LABVERDE, a not-for-profit organization based in Brazil, with a mission to explore the connection between science, art, and the natural environment. Fraiji received her degree in communication from the Superior School of Marketing, a postgraduate degree in cultural policies from Barcelona University, and she holds an MA in curating arts from the University Ramon Llull in Barcelona. Naomi Bailey-Cooper is a fashion textiles designer, artist, and researcher exploring values that could shape ethical and long-lasting fashion. Her work places an emphasis on the sensory tactility and aesthetic appeal of unconventional natural materials. Naomi received the funding awards from the Victoria and Albert Museum and the London College of Fashion for her PhD by practice, where she pioneered embellishment alternative to fur and exotic animal materials. She is a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts, a climate reality leader, and is listed in the Craft Council directory. And Yifeat is a vocalist, a composer, a free improviser, and a sound artist. She combines voice, electronics, field recordings, and text to create interdisciplinary sound works that derive from her research of the human voice, technology, acoustic ecology, and listening practices. Her album, Amazonian Traces of Self, that explores the intersection of voice and environmental sounds from the Brazilian Amazon rainforest, was released in November 2020 on Flaming Pines record label. She holds an MA in Sound Arts from London College of Communication at UAL. And finally, just a thank you to CSF, to the postgraduate community at UAL, and especially to Abigail Fletcher, who helped me to organize this series of conversation. And now over to you, Lilian.
Good morning from the Amazon. Good afternoon for you. First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation, Camilla. Thanks to Lucy Orta as well. It's wonderful that we are able to organize this conversation online. We are passing through a very delicate moment here in the Amazon. I guess all humanity are facing a big challenge of our time. But here in the Amazon, we are the epicenter of the pandemic in Brazil. So we're not going to be able to organize LABVERDE programs this year, unfortunately. And that's why I think it's so great to have this conversation through digital platforms to keep the discussion alive and also to keep the network alive. So thanks a lot one more time. So talking about LABVERDE program, the program was developed in 2013. Is an association between a cultural organization, Manifesta Arte e Cultura, and the National Institute of Amazonian Research, INPA, and the National Institute of Amazonian Research is an institution that exists for over 60 years, so have a long history of data and information about the Amazon biome. But before talking about the program, before talking about the arts, I would like to ask you, why are we organizing a program in the Amazon? Why is the Amazon so important for all of us? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this before coming or before thinking of coming to the Amazon? Why the Amazon is so important? If you are breathing now, you have a connection with the Amazon. If you can bear climate now, you have a connection with the Amazon. As you know, the Amazon region is one of the biggest remaining natural area of the planet and provides the two main resources for humanity's survival: oxygen and water. Oxygen, I guess everybody knows that all plants have the ability to process, consume CO2, and eject oxygen. But imagine in the scale of the rainforest. Also, the forest has this ability to export water to all the planets. The rainforest works as a water pump, spreading water vapor to the atmosphere, helping to maintain planet climate. So the water, it's recycled here, and the forest ejects a lot of water to the air. The other goes to the south hemisphere and enters to polar circle of water and exporting humidity to all the planet. So although we are far away, I'm here in the Amazon and you are there in London, we are connected to the wind and to the atmospheric air humidity coming from the Amazon. So I think we are starting LABVERDE's themes and a LABVERDE statement. In nature, everything is connected. We, as nature species, we are connected too. So because the Amazon environmental assets and because of international chains of exploitation of natural resources, we understand the rainforest preservation is a global issue. We truly believe that we'll be more effective if we work together, articulating local and international actors. Since 2013, we received more than 100 artists from all disciplines, all continents, and from 36 countries. Through art, we managed to export the discussion about the Amazon to museums, festivals, and cultural centers. We are also promoting here in Manaus, where I live, where LABVERDE is running, a festival once a year to promote new ecology values to local communities. And by the way, we are organizing the festival online this year, unfortunately, but it's going to be translated into English, so please join us. We're going to do a discussion about the different times in the Amazon, do a journey to the deep time of the Amazon to speculate about the possible futures of the region. We are launching the festival in March, so stay tuned. So back to the Amazon. What we are trying to do with LABVERDE program is bringing together artists, scientists, communities, and non-human actors to exchange energy, affection, knowledge. Participants are learning and teaching, not just with a regular science, but also learning with the forests. Our goal is to join different professionals, fields, material, and life to live together. Coexistence is a very important part of the creative process. Coexistence with humans and non-human matters. Program methodology has different dimensions. It's exchange of experiencing the land and reflecting about the land. Having access to different data and informations. So we learn with our own observation and feelings, but also learn with each other, with the community. For instance, the rainforest is a place that activates body senses. I think all natural places we can learn with other senses, right? A very important way to understand environmental dynamics is through listening. We can imagine that the first biodiversity of the world is also the first biodiversity of sounds of the world. So the forest is like a big orchestra of non-humans that talks to each other, communicates to each other, interacts through sounds. Well, I guess Yifeat Ziv will talk more about this experience of deep listening. Also through touch, through smell, it's another very important sense that we have to that we have to activate to understand places, breaking through the visual supremacy. So also Naomi, we have like two amazing examples of research that connects to these other senses to capture a place. Naomi's research is also talking about touching and new textures. So, but here is especially important because the rainforest is a very, very dark ambient. Just less than 10% of the sunlight reach the ground. So we really need to break the visual supremacy to capture the space. Another important dimension of the program is the mediation with specialists. In land where nature was always colonized, it's important to understand local narratives. In LABVERDE, when you see a tree, we find out its popular and scientific name, discover its life history, find out its environmental assets, interconnection, cultural values, economic values. That's mean a whole holistic approach based on the concept of multi-species, where a tree is a collective body that interacts with me and everybody else and every creatures that are around this ecosystem. Another part of the program, another time that we use using the program is to discuss political issues. The life extermination in the rainforest obey local and international dynamics like other natural areas, right? Obey multinational supplies of commodities and national political conjunctures. Now we are facing a hard task with Bolsonaro politics, right? I think everybody heard about Bolsonaro. But Bolsonaro is just one player in a big game that also European nations are involved, also other multinationals are involved. So for us, it's really important to understand the complexity of Amazonian issue in a context of international dynamics of colonization that operates in a capital system. We believe all consumers and the modern way of life are part of the problem. And to face environmental crisis, we need a collective responsibility approach. I guess this is a discussion that is being really is going on right now, how we can learn with other ways of life, how we can learn with other societies to face a post-pandemic period, right? So this for us is really important, how to break through the anthropocentrism and find other ways to live with the environment. So to end, I would like to share if you all creative thinkers questions that we are trying to answer during LABVERDE program. How language can approach environmental justice? How does art affect nature and its life? How does culture contribute to spotlight ideas to postpone the end of nature? So I guess this is also a question that Naomi and Yifeat might try to answer. I brought here a small video of LABVERDE program, but I don't know if we still have time. If have time, it's like a video of 5 minutes and is sharing a LABVERDE experience. Camilla, can we watch this video?
Maybe we can share the link to the video in the chat, and we can go back at the end if there is time, if you agree.
Okay. Okay. So thanks for your attention. Here you can find my contacts to keep in touch.
Thank you, Lilian. Thank you. Such a powerful and important presentation, and you touched upon so many points that I hope during the Q&A, I mean, with Naomi and Yifeat's presentation, and then during the Q&A will be discussed and unpacked. I would move straight to Naomi now.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Naomi Bailey-Cooper. I'm a fashion textiles designer and researcher. Recently graduated from London College of Fashion. So my residency project was part of my PhD research, developing embellishment alternatives to fur and exotic animal materials. Part of this research was exploring the appeal of fur and exotics used in fashion, which led me to develop the residency project, which I called Active Specimens, exploring alternative ways of recording and representing animal life in the forest. I wanted to use textile embellishments to record animal life, which is different to how scientists usually take a euthanized specimen, which you can see on the right-hand side. So I was mostly drawn to insects when I was in the forest, in particular leafhopper nymphs, which is a type of juvenile insect you can see on the top right-hand side corner. They're really interesting in that when you go near them, they jump away in this really interesting way, and they often cluster as well. So you'll find them jumping kind of to and away from each other, which I've tried to capture in the image on the left. And I was really interested to see whether I could produce this as a type of embellishment that kind of moves and jumps away from each other when handled. So my first way of exploring this was actually by embedding magnets into embellishments, which I thought looked quite similar to those leafhopper nymphs, which you can see there. And also embedding magnets into embellishments also means that the fabric sample itself can change form and create these really nice folds in the fabrics too. And you can see there in a little bit more detail where I've embedded magnets into the back of those embellishments through hand sewing. And you can see there on the right hand side, it's creating those gathers, and it also really encourages touch. And as I mentioned, you know, recording animals in the forest using textiles captures kind of movement and tactility, which you otherwise wouldn't capture through regular euthanized specimens of animals. So this is my final sample of trying to record this leafhopper nymph. You can see there the leafhopper represented through those embellishments. And then there's one in motion there, you can see. So this is exactly this idea of encouraging people to actually handle the work and therefore understand a bit more about what's, the life that's in the forest. And you can see there, through handling it, the magnets effectively kind of move as you're handling the fabric, and they move in a quite erratic and unusual way, kind of trying to capture that defense mechanism of the insect in the forest. So another leafhopper nymph I was really interested in is one I saw at night, which I wasn't able to capture very easily through my own camera, because it was very evasive. It was very kind of hard to capture well, which you can see, as I say, that kind of slightly blurry photograph on the right hand side. But I later found out that it was in fact the same species which had been recently discovered by Trond Larsen. So it was actually quite an unusual and rare insect. And I was really inspired by its markings. Again, it has these waxy tendrils, which it's used as a defense mechanism. And I wanted to try and emulate that. And I used glass yarn to try and emulate that waxy tendril that's coming out of the insect. And also I experimented with the idea of trying to hide embellishments within pleats as well, to kind of emulate that idea of this kind of rare insect that's quite evasive and hard to capture. You can see there as well where I've experimented with trying to hide embellishments under kind of translucent fabric. Again, kind of inviting interaction to further understand the work. And it's worth mentioning that this work built upon my existing samples I've been developing before the residency, where I had been developing a wig making technique with embroidery. And this was part of my PhD research to explore alternatives to fur and exotic embellishment. And really this technique had evolved as a way of implanting yarn into base fabric. But when I look back on this work, I just thought that it was something about it that was quite similar to those leafhopper nymphs. And so that's just to mention, that's kind of where that had started. So in fact, that residency in LABVERDE really heightened my current practice. So you can see there, this is one of the final fabric samples inspired by that leafhopper nymph, and you can just about see the embellishment hidden there. And I purposefully wanted to only include a few embellishments, again, trying to reflect this idea of rarity. And you can see there, through slight movement of the piece, you can see the embellishments a little bit more easily. You may also be able to see just near the top on the right-hand side, there's another embellishment that's hidden underneath a pleat. So the final insect I was interested in was a Pus Caterpillar, one I found here on the left-hand side was a juvenile Pus Caterpillar. And I really, really liked this kind of sort of a locomotive, almost this kind of disjointed movement that it had, and the way that it moved across nature. And I found that really interesting, and it kind of really invited touch, but however you can't touch it because it's a poisonous insect. So I was looking at trying to emulate that again with embellishment, and looking at this, looking at developing kind of individual embellishment components that was trying to emulate that type of movement that it had. And my final sample, where I developed that, was I actually used an existing backing fabric I'd already developed, where using hemp, where I pulled out threads to create this kind of fur-like effect. And then when I layered those caterpillar embellishments on top, I found that they were really camouflaged, and it really added to the piece, and also invited more tactility, I think, as well. And you can see there again, when the fabric samples moved ever so slightly, you notice the embellishments even more because they've been attached to that translucent layer. So after my residency, I exhibited this work in the Onca Gallery in Brighton, and also at the Design Research for Change exhibition at the London Design Festival. And these were two really great opportunities for me to showcase the work to the public and actually invite them to interact with the work. And for the exhibition that was in Brighton, I was also on site to talk to them about the Amazon rainforest and my experiences. And you can see here that the people were able to, as I said, interact with the work, handle it. I really kind of invited that, which is, you know, sometimes quite unusual within an art exhibition. But I felt it was really important that people were able to interact, understand those insects' characteristics. So I've since been working with a cooperative in the Amazon rainforest to produce wild rubber from trees dispersed in the forest as part of a natural ecosystem that employs local communities. So I've been using rubber, and you can see a sample there on the left-hand side, where I've used a sheet of rubber and cut it into a matrix effect, which I've used to hold together this fur and feather-like embellishment I'd been developing. That's using glass yarn. And the rubber acts effectively like a skin there to hold those embellishments in place, but also connecting a little bit more to provenance as well, and actually inviting again that conversation of where those materials come from, and are they connecting us to nature a little bit more than other materials perhaps. So this is a further development of that sample where I threaded glass yarn through wild rubber. You can see that in a little bit more detail there. And I've also used the wild rubber to create smaller individual embellishments that I then attached to a dress. So the quality of the rubber itself was actually really useful in that it grasps filaments really well. So that side of it was really helpful in my research. And the dress on the right-hand side has been exhibited as part of the Fashion from Nature exhibition at the V&A. So yeah, so basically I just found my residency, you know, it's amazing. It fed into so much more practice than I initially anticipated. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Very fascinating work, and I'm sure there will be some questions during the Q&A, and it would be also wonderful to see what you're up to now. But I would hand it over to Yifeat for her presentation now.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank the AER team, and especially Lucy and Camilla and Abby and Fiona and Lilian and the LABVERDE team for this really meaningful experience that I was able to have just before all of the world got closed. And I mean, now it sounds like a distant dream to travel all the way from London to the Amazon. So thank you. As you introduced me, I already am a sound artist and a vocalist. I'm originally from Jerusalem, Israel, but I currently based in London, and I graduated from the Sound Arts at the LCC. I come from a musical background. I studied composition, and in recent years, most of my works are dedicated to voice and listening, and I usually create performances and sound installations. And I came to the Amazon with some questions about listening to environmental sounds, and the way is becoming a continuation of the listening experience. And as Lilian explained, the visuality is quite limited in the rainforest, and therefore the sense of hearing is very central to the experience as a visitor, but it is also essential for all of the residents of the rainforest, which are the animals and the indigenous people that uses sound making and listening as a way to communicate and as a way to survive. So because of the fact that the Amazon is a home for thousands of different species, the actual soundscape of the Amazon is extremely rich and overwhelming sometimes, and it is constantly changing throughout the day and night according to the different behavior of the animals. So I was really interested in exploring those listening experience to this very unique soundscape. I spent most of my free time at LABVERDE performing some deep listening meditations inspired by artists such as Paulino Oliveros and others. And I also used my voice as a response to what I was hearing. using some free improvisation techniques. And I recorded all of these sessions. I recorded the soundscape at different times of the day and at different locations around the reserve. And one of the first things that were truly meaningful to me that happened while I was first starting to use my voice was the fact that I discovered that the Amazon has a natural reverberation, an echo. I didn't expect to hear an echo because I usually hear echo at some enclosed spaces such as chapels or even in your shower. But thinking about the Amazon as a so-called open space, I was a bit surprised by it, but it is actually a natural phenomena that is caused by the density of the trees and the closed canopies. And then this whole experience of hearing the traces of my voice reflected back at me in combination with the immersive studying program, getting so much information about the Amazon and about environmental issues and the way human beings are affecting this incredible place. So this whole experience of hearing an echo of my voice became this experience of mirroring my own presence and mirroring my own, you could say, sound pollution in the soundscape of the rainforest. And it became the starting point for the works that I've created. I wanted to use to think both of the reduced visuality in order to create a more immersive listening experience and to deal with all of the environmental context of the Amazon. So the first work that I've created, I didn't move the presentation, here's me listening to the Amazon. Yeah, so the first work that I've created was a performance work called Amazonian Traces of Self. It was presented just a few weeks after I came back from the Amazon, and it was the end of August when the news was filled with information about the fire, the massive fires of the summer of 2019, and I really wanted to reflect on what is going on in the Amazon through my work. So I've selected 3 moments from my experience in the Amazon. I used recordings from these moments, and then in the live performance, I recall these moments and the way I worked with my voice in the Amazon. So I'm using my voice as a response to what I'm hearing from the recordings. The piece is about 18 minutes long, so I'm not able to share all of it, but there is a documentation online. So I performed this piece a few times in London and in Israel. Then COVID started and I couldn't perform it anymore, but I was lucky enough to be able to develop it into different mediums. So currently, the piece is presented as a listening installation in a sound gallery in Tel Aviv. So I created this immersive listening space that the piece is currently played in it, and you can also read the text that reflects on these my listening experiences. So I will show you a short documentation of this piece. Okay, I hope you were able to hear as well. Okay, let's get back to my presentation. Sorry about this. Okay, so we're here, yeah. Okay, so this was the installation version of Amazonian Traces of Self, and this piece was also, do you see the presentation now?
Yes, if we can see it.
So this piece was also released an album a few months ago. I'm sorry I couldn't share the whole piece, but if you want, you can look for the album or the documentation of the performance online. Yeah, and then the other piece that I created as a response to my LABVERDE experience was presented as part of my MA graduate show at LCC, and it is called The Echo of Our Breath. It's a multi-speaker sound installation that tries to create an engagement with this whole connection to air and to the carbon cycle. Some of the things that Lilian was talking about earlier. I found that there is a very interesting connection between sound and air, which are both ungraspable and visible. And I try to create this connection in this piece. So this multi-speaker installation is comprised of recordings of the soundscape of the Amazon, but also of recordings of this reverberation that I was mentioning earlier. I was able to capture the reverberation of the Amazon. And the piece is controlled by a CO2 sensor that is located in the installation space and constantly changing the sound according to the amount of CO2 in space. And the amount of CO2 in space is affected by the people who spend time in the space, both the number of people and also the time they spend in the installation, because of the fact that they're breathing, and whenever they breathe out, they breathe CO2. So I was trying to create this connection between the CO2 that we exhale while we're breathing and the CO2 that is spread into the air, about the fossil fuels that are spread to the air from different human industries, and to invite people to spend some time and to listen to the Amazon and to have this thinking about the carbon cycle. So I will finish with a small video documenting this piece. So I will share it now. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Yifeat. Fantastic, wonderful work. We only have 10 minutes left, so I would open up to our attendees for any question. The first question was for Lilian. If you can share the link to the video that we didn't have time to show earlier. If you can share the link put the link into the chat, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you. And then there's a question from Lauren to Naomi, asking if you can say a bit more about the use of glass yarn in your project. Very inspirational work.
Hi, thank you for the question. Yeah, so I discovered glass yarn during my PhD, so before I went to LABVERDE. And I was basically trying to source unconventional materials that could be similar to fur and feathers or have effects that were similar to fur and feathers. And I found glass yarn just had this really amazing quality. It was kind of, it was also what's so interesting about it is it doesn't have necessarily the qualities of glass you'd expect. So it's really soft. It feels like hair. It's almost kind of, people have described it like almost like a kind of greasy hair feel. And yeah, I just found it was just a really interesting medium to work with, and not many textile designers haven't really worked with it recently. However, one of the things that kind of inspired me to use it was that it was used as an alternative to feathers in the late 19th century. So it was a part of some other work I've been doing about researching archives and materials that have been used in history. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. There's a question from Alisa for both Yifeat and Naomi, saying, besides from creating artistic responses and research, how are you sustaining this LABVERDE experience alive within the urban global North culture? How are you sustaining the radically different and deeper ways of being, knowing, and experiences you have discovered while being in a radically contradictory environment of the city?
I mean, I can try to answer this really challenging question. I mean, especially now during a pandemic, while we're not, I mean, I feel that most of my time is spent not even in a city. I'm just in between the four walls of my home and trying to find ways to interact with the world outside. I think that one very meaningful thing that happened after LABVERDE is the fact that we stayed in contact with the other artists and feeling that we're not alone in our thoughts and feelings about the environment, but sharing thoughts and sharing works with the community of other artists and practitioners who are interested in this in responding to this issues. Nowadays, I'm part of a group of another group of artists and practitioners who are trying to develop some strategies to listening to non-human others. It is currently in the development phase, but I hope to be able to share work with this group later this year. So I mean, I carry those thoughts about listening, and I feel that listening is actually something that each one of us can question and try to work with, no matter where we are, and it can connect us to this thinking and feeling the environment and the environmental issues. So I hope this answers your question somehow. Maybe Naomi would like to continue.
No, I think I feel similarly to what you said, really. I think just, you know, being able to be there in the Amazon rainforest, having not really been in an environment like that before at all, and it forces you to slow down and it forces you to listen and to stop and to really examine something. And I found that experience so valuable. And also I kind of came to the residency in my head saying, you know, I'm a designer, and then being surrounded by people who describe themselves as artists. And I feel like I learned so much from that. And I learned that part of my work was actually more artistic than I'd realized. And I think that the kind of the artistic approach to looking at things and the eye that people had on the Amazon is so sensory. You know, I think Lillian covered that really well, is that, you know, it's about touch, it's about sound, it's about taste, and there are people doing all these different types of projects about that. And I found the other people so inspiring, as well as the actual Amazon itself. And I think when I came back, it really affected my work, definitely. And I think it's something that's really important, that should affect fashion anyway, which is kind of mostly the medium I work in, is to slow down and is to like rethink what values we actually want fashion to have, and textiles as well, and how we can bring some of these ideas into that. And I think just to connect us to nature even more. I mean, as I mentioned, my residency was a big part of my PhD research, and through my PhD research I found out that people were using animal materials because it connected them to nature. And so it's like my way of trying to say, well, can we do something else that connects us to nature as well? You know, there are other means and ways of doing that. And I'm definitely still on that journey of exploring how that can be done. And it's definitely something that stays with me. And I think it's since that residency, that was my first residency, I've done other residencies which have also explored nature and have explored systems as well, and slower systems design. And so I think it's affected a lot of things. And I think that knowledge has the potential to affect lots of things in a kind of more of a Western culture that we have.
Thank you. There's actually a second part of a question from Aliza to you, again, Naomi, asking to know more about your work with the rabbit artisans, considering that often these relationships are short-lasting. Do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of started that relationship with this cooperative around the same time that I started LABVERDE, actually. So it kind of was working a little bit in parallel, but I didn't fully explore the material until I came back to the UK. But yeah, I've been trying to work with cooperatives from lots of different regions around the world. And it was really the qualities of the wild rubber that initially made me want to work with the material. And then it was like, well, actually, this is actually giving something back as well. And it's actually connecting us more to something. It's got all of these other values. And then physically going to the Amazon and realizing that connection even further. So yeah, so even though I started that relationship in 2017, it's still something that's ongoing. So I'm still communicating with and experimenting with rubber from the company's called Wild Rubber, if you want to look them up. But I'm still, you know, continuing that, and I'm still experimenting with it. And I suppose one of the challenges is, especially if you look at it from more design's perspective, is how that can be scaled up. But then I think you don't necessarily want it to be scaled up. So I think that's also makes you think slightly differently about fashion products. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, just looking at your question, wondering how else I can answer that. I hope that answers it well enough.
Yeah, we are sorry, running out of time. I think we have time for a last question to you, Lilian, from Francesco. He's asking, what could you say to other organizations like yours about what the benefits of such a partnership with the AER program are for you, and what would you like to do more in the future with UAL or in general?
Well, thanks for the questions. I'm just very impacted by Naomi, Yifeat's talk. So it's so great to hear them talking about the project, because we don't follow up. We follow up through social media, but we don't have this time to know, truly know what they are doing now. So it's great to hear them. So concerning the question, what the benefits such a partner? Well, it's wonderful to have this language, these partnerships, and to bring people that are exploring so much and so deep in art and design, and with such a different materials. So here we have a networks of artists. We are receiving a lot of Brazilian artists, also local artists, with the LABVERDE program, but the approach is totally different. You know, they are working more with the body, they are working with more with like local communities. So because of historical influence and because of cultural influence in South America, the art approach with environment is different. So it's great to have people from abroad to interpret nature, and in such a great way, like Naomi and Yifeat they are doing, because they are really taking time. What Naomi did, for instance, Naomi found out animals that are creatures that are never seen. She really took her time and meditate and observe for many hours to reach to that animal. The same for Yifeat. You know, Yifeat was like going there and staying listening for many hours to understand the different layers of sounds. So I think was different from what artists from Latin America does. And I don't know if this cultural aspect and the background of the artists are influencing their way of doing art. But that's why it's so wonderful to cooperate with University of Art of London to receive these artists from so many backgrounds, so many histories, so many countries, right?
I believe it's very beneficial for UAL artists and practitioners to receive inputs and share ideas and learn about different perspectives. As you said, from more local artists engaging in different ways and engaging with local communities. So it's beneficial from both sides. It's very inspiring to hear from you. I'm very pleased that despite physical distance, we managed to get socially together. And I'm afraid I would carry on talking to you, but I'm afraid we need to wrap now. We reached 2 o'clock. So thank you so much again, Lilian, Naomi, and Yifeat. We shared the links to your organizations, websites, so people can explore more. And the conversation has been recorded, so will be made available at some point. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your practice. Thank you, and bye everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.